Welcome to Demand Gen Pod. My name is Ryan. Today, we are talking about building trust and credibility in demand generation. And it's important. Let's talk about why it matters so much. All right, welcome back, and thanks for joining us today. So building trust and credibility, it matters so much because a positive reputation for a business creates this foundation for long-term relationships with our customers. And whether we like it or not, and whether we can control it or not, which to a degree we can't, obviously, trust impacts the success of our demand gen efforts by influencing customer buying decisions and increasing conversion rates. The more that somebody trusts us, the more likely they are to buy from us. The more that somebody trusts us, the more likely they are to think of us when they're going to buy something and keep us in mind. So just as important as brand credibility is, just as important as thought leadership is, that trust factor is really important too. So I think that you could easily have someone who knows your brand but doesn't trust you, knows you're in the market for, knows that you're a leader in you're a thought leader in the space, but might not necessarily trust the sales side or the product side. So there are lots of different ways that you could have one of those factors and not the other, and they all matter, but specifically with trust. So a couple of key strategies for establishing that trust: delivering on promises, providing exceptional customer service, and being transparent and honest. When Nurture Labs was started, we started around this basis that we previously worked for agencies that made lots of promises on the sales end that the consultants couldn't necessarily fulfill. And that was very, very frustrating as a consultant for myself. And when the company was started, the whole point of the company was to be transparent and honest. So we'll have sales calls all the time, and those sales calls will go something like, we have this that we need to accomplish. This is what we're doing right now. This is where we're spending our money. This is where we need help. And sometimes those calls result in us declining business because it's not the right time for us to step in. Because what's really important, I think, is by the end of it, that the client sees ROI. Or they see a path to ROI. And if that path to ROI requires $30,000 in cost that doesn't involve any ROI in order to get there, because there's a bunch of other work that we don't necessarily do in order to get that done, say paid or something like that, then it's really difficult to justify that. And we have a difficult time justifying us being there in the first place. I think that builds honesty and trust, because we're being so transparent and saying, yeah, sure, you can hire us right now if you want to. We could do a retainer, but we think that money would be wasted and you might be better waiting. And that's a pretty powerful statement, particularly in a sales call. Another good option here is understanding your target audience, and to gain a better understanding about them, how businesses can conduct research and analyze customer data, engage in social listening. You should also be able to gather insights on customer pain points and preferences and demographics and behavior to inform their demand gen strategies. And all of this stuff matters because when you are starting to think about how you're marketing to people, and this is a recurring theme on this podcast, but as you start to think about how to market to people and how to message people, tailoring that messaging and your approach really requires learning as much about each person as possible, being able to capture that data and then leveraging it in your sends and having enough options in your sends and your content to be able to provide for those different needs and values and preferences. So what about creating valuable and relevant content? The content plays such an important role in building trust and credibility because it allows us to show our experience, it allows us to educate our audience and provide that value. And like I said, I think that trust is more than just how good are you at providing free information and how good are you at helping an individual or a business to succeed before they even have to pay you a penny. But I think that it's also the entire life cycle and the entire experience. And that goes for everywhere along the way, between lead, conversion, website, marketing, sales, all of those things. Now, businesses can create valuable and relevant, more importantly, content by conducting industry research, addressing common customer challenges, and delivering actionable insights. And content formats like blog posts and white papers, case studies, video tutorials, these can all be really effective in building trust if they deliver really useful information. The other thing that you can use here are testimonials and social proof. So you can even use testimonials and social proof inside of emails too. You can do this by collecting positive customer feedback and rating reviews, success stories, white papers, things like that. And you can collect these things by requesting them. You can request them from satisfied customers. You can incentivize reviews. That's absolutely fine. You can feature customer testimonials on your website, on social, and like I said, in email as well. And those can really impact the decision-making process by providing a degree of social validation, showing that somebody's peers are interested in what they're interested in. They've been happy with you as a vendor or whatever the case may be. An extension of that would be thought leadership and expertise. And you can establish that thought leadership by creating more content, sharing unique insights and perspectives, and engaging in industry events and conversations. You see lots of companies talking at conferences. Every single marketing conference is a pay-to-play conference. All of those speakers are there because they paid. We've reached out to conferences and it's been, say, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 to be able to go and speak at a conference. Sometimes they have smaller packages where you might not be speaking on a stage, but you might do a roundtable discussion. They have all sorts of different ways that they can monetize conferences, and everybody who you see there speaking, it's an advertisement, but it's certainly a way that you can do it. And people will go to conferences looking to learn, and that's a great audience to be able to pose yourself to. One of the benefits of positioning yourself as an expert in demand gen means that you can attract a larger audience, you can gain trust and credibility, and that can really start to snowball too. And you can be seen as a go-to resource in the industry. I mean, that's obviously one of the reasons why I want to be able to do a podcast like this, is to hopefully be able to share things with you that maybe you hadn't thought of before or you weren't aware of, or reinforce ideas that you've already had. That's also really great. And that you can turn to us and come and say, oh, these guys really know what they're talking about. I'd love to talk to them. That's kind of the whole point, much like many of the other marketing podcasts that are around too. But ultimately, what I really want is just to have you learn. If you can learn something new, or I get you jazzed up about trying something different that you hadn't tried before, I think that's a big win. Whether we ever see business out of it or not, it doesn't really matter. You can showcase all this expertise not only through podcasts like this one, but blog posts, webinars, speaking engagements, and guest contributions to industry publications. We get lots of emails about that too, asking if we write an article and then pay to have written the article, which is pretty funny. And not really for us, the whole pay-to-play thing, but that's okay. And then again, just wrapping up again with transparency and honesty, demonstrating transparency and honesty that is really focused around openly communicating about product information and pricing, potential limitations, addressing customer concerns. Certainly in the consulting world, with pricing, I think that lots of people, especially smaller companies, get worried about how pricing is going to work. How do they know they're not going to get overbilled? All of those things. So addressing those issues up front, I think, are really important, and making sure that the way that you're billing aligns to the way that the client wants to be billed. And if it's not, can you find some sort of middle ground? And in addition to that, it really does contribute to long-term relationships and customer loyalty by establishing that trust. And so that trust goes well beyond the sales process, but also into the actual work that you're doing. So when you see problems, call them out. You don't have to be rude about calling them out by any standard, but just saying, if we want the best success here, I would recommend that we take this route. Another thing that I found that can establish trust and integrity is that if there is a disagreement, and we certainly have had them with clients about the best way to move forward, particularly in something like demand generation where we're building emails, is test. So if you don't know, test it. If you think one thing and somebody else thinks another thing and you both can't quite come to an agreement on how to move forward, just test it. One of you will either be right or neither of you will be wrong, because the reality is that if you run a test and they are basically similar, then neither of you were wrong. And if you run a test and one of them completely outperforms the other one, then one of you was right. And at the end of the day, all that matters is that we are being successful in driving business. And so we can do that through testing. That's pretty much where I wanted to land on today. I hope this has been interesting, and try to make these under about 10 minutes, and that's right about where we are. So with that said, have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next week on the Demand Gen Pod.